Hello everyone, this is part 46 of What If Naruto Was Abused and Trained by Madara Uchiha, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Imagine Nagato's suspicions being roused when one of the Emperor's subordinates walked into his office and made it clear to him as daylight that the Emperor wanted to see him. It didn't seem like a request, but a demand for his presence before the Emperor. Given the expression and forcefulness of the man who'd walked confidently into his office, Nagato assumed it wasn't a request. The Emperor was demanding his presence. He had been surprised. Really. Before that, Naruto hadn't so much as requested his presence in a long time, even when he declined to be present in some of the meetings held within this palace. Nagato did have important matters to deal with in Omegakure. He always has. It wasn't even safe for him to be away from his country at this stage, especially with the war this man has instigated coming into the front lines. It is of importance to note that without Naruto, a war would not be gracing the elemental nations. Then again, he didn't loathe the idea of a war. In fact, he prefers things playing in this way. He would have started it himself when time was convenient to his plans. Without doubt the Emperor could and would thin down number of the enemies, and that would ease things for him. Without too much opposition to face, he wouldn't have to exhaust his resources and it would be easier to move about without too much resistance. As he saw things, it was better to allow the Emperor to play his games while he readied Omegakure for the greater things to come in the new world that will be born after the war. Nagato didn't have any problem with the Emperor, he still doesn't. He just knew that the man has no interest in his dream, peace. With his power, if he really wanted to make the dream a reality, he could have brought it closer days ago. But he did nothing. He just settled down in his royal palace, watching the world continue to rot. That was the kind of attitude that bothered the god of peace. Even so, Nagato didn't hold any contempt for the Emperor. He does in fact respect the man for his power and achievements. An admirable trait about the man was that he didn't arrogantly boast about his achievements, nor does he go around flaunting his power for everyone to see. Regardless, it doesn't change the situation that surrounds this country, a situation that has gripped this world of shinobi, nor does it change that he believed it isn't right for a person like Naruto to sit without care. The man only cares, to a certain degree, about his kingdom. Nothing more or less. Gaara's crusade with May produced no results. Nagato didn't find that to be a surprise. Not at all. While he may no longer believe that peace can only be achieved through pain, he knew that as long as one's situation remains in this world, nothing would be achieved through meaningless talks. Hence he has always declined to commit in meetings held by those two. Having been called by the Emperor, Nagato hadn't wasted time, despite having stared at the temptation to relax just to see what the man would do if he said he was busy with protecting his country to honor his call. He decided it best to leave some things be. The Emperor has a nasty streak about him, his power wasn't just a myth senseis tell their students, it was and is the real deal. At this stage, Nagato didn't want to tempt things. He just wanted to see through this war. He wanted to live another day to grasp peace with both his hands. As soon as he walked into the throne room, Nagato was greeted by an eerie silence and darkness. An oppressing wave of power wrestled with him, trying to force him into submission. In fact, there was so much power floating about the hall that Nagato halted for a second to look around to see if there was something wrong. There was none. Having been once hailed as a god, Nagato didn't allow himself to be troubled by this greeting. There was no sense of danger, just a load of power moving about without purpose. Nagato shook it off, stealing his own chakra to breathe freely as he would like. The only sound that greeted Nagato's ears was the sound of his footsteps, echoing within the large room. He knew the Emperor was there. His Rinnegan could see the silhouette settling on the throne. He didn't mind the darkness either. He has in fact done nothing that could change his relationship with the Emperor, well, not yet anyway. But there was no reason to be gripped by fear. It was still somewhat amazing how this place could be filled with so much darkness when the outside was bathing in the light of the happy sun. It was almost like he was deep in an underground cave. As soon as Nagato stopped moving, the lights flickered into life. Nagato could now clearly see the emperor. In his usual pose he looked a bit stern. No, his expression resembled that of an emotionless man in power, addressing his underlings without the air of arrogance and superiority. Perhaps that was not quite it as well. Indifference it seemed likely. Yeah, Nagato went along with that line. Nagato, the emperor said, his tone was a twin to the expression on his face. Emperor, Nagato responded automatically. I came as soon as I got the message. I figured it was something urgent, Nagato said, with narrowed eyes, expression purely blank of any emotion, tone as well. Urgent. The emperor seemed to pose a question, but his expression said otherwise. His visible eye just stared straight into Nagato's. The silence that followed the emperor's uttering greeted Nagato with a cold breath that pushed him to give a response, despite knowing full well that the man wasn't looking for an answer. Your messenger was rather forceful. So I assumed it must have been an urgent matter you wished to discuss with me. Was I wrong? Silence once more washed over the room as the emperor just stared at Nagato as if he hadn't said a word. What do you think of this lurking war? The emperor asked. Apparently, what Nagato said wasn't worth the effort to give response. Then again, he knew the man wasn't looking for an answer, despite appearances. So maybe he didn't need to respond to what he felt wasn't worth responding to. Nagato shifted his thoughts, showed no displeasure in the emperor, he kept his features schooled, never avoiding the emperor's gaze. He was by no means a weak man. As far as he was concerned, he had more experience with life and battles than the young emperor. It would take a lot for the man to scare him into submission. I believe it is a necessary tragedy that must grace this world for change to occur. With the destruction that is about to occur, it will make rebuilding possible. Nagato said. They couldn't rebuild what wasn't destroyed. It was easy to rebuild than starting a new thing with the current system in place. In principle, the current system had to be destroyed in order for a new system to be founded. The war would do the dirty deed and he would wear the robes of a saint preaching his principles, but he would also wear the gloves of an enforcer if things spiraled out of control. This was a chance to rebuild, reach that peace he'd dreamt of during those days he was with Jiraiya. It looked closer now. He could feel its breath touching his skin. It was just a matter of time and a few things shifting into positions and his dream would come to life. The emperor still continued to stare at Nagato, unblinking as he was. But the god of Omegakure wasn't unnerved by it. It didn't look like the man was trying to break into his mask to spy into his soul. Yes, those eyes could make you feel exposed at times, but this look was just another, the look of a man staring down at something a bit peculiar. I believe so as well, Naruto finally said. However, the war will bring about much consequences. Not that I care for it, but for my allies and for the sake of my word, I must tread carefully. Nagato narrowed his eyes a bit. That was a bit surprising to hear from the man. Nagato knew Naruto wasn't stupid. Not by any chance. You could say he was because he doesn't use his mind that much, no offense meant to the emperor. Granted, he was still the same battle-loving shinobi, consequences be damned, is kind of what he would have expected. Perhaps even the emperor can change. Nagato snorted at the thought. It was highly unlikely, but still possible. The possibility of it occurring wasn't just tangible enough for Nagato to grasp or to fully believe, but it was there. Still, what kind of consequences will follow after the war? Isn't that the man planned to subdue the other nations beyond his control? There wasn't a necessity to subdue the smaller nations. Naruto would take no interest in them. The 5 great countries were of importance. You control them, you control the elemental nations. But still, anything could be dealt with if he was in control. Not unless it was hatred that the emperor was afraid of. No, afraid is the wrong word. He did just say he didn't care, but was concerned about the state of his allies. Hatred was plague that has troubled the elemental nations for generations, it has been the main force behind wars. And he knew more than anyone that hatred didn't just disappear under the light of a moon on a summer's night. By seeking to control the other countries, we are likely to be hated by the nations. To them, we will be oppressing their freedom. Many loved ones will be lost and we will take the blame for it. The outsiders will hate us while our people will revere us for victory against our enemies, Nagato said, saying a bit of his thoughts. Of course the we part was just for show. There was no we in anything. He'd originally thought the Emperor had not instructed for a Megacure to prepare for war because he didn't want them involved. The thought was foolish though. Whether they liked it or not, they would be forced to take part in the war. Nagato knew it. However, if they focused on defense rather than offense, their part in subduing any nation will be minimum, or none at all. Nagato thought it was likely going to be the latter. Someone had to play the good guy and someone had to play the bad guy. The Emperor could afford to play any part because he had the power to protect his empire against any storm. It was another matter for him. The Emperor's response came in a bit quick this time. Yes, that apparently will become the case. However, not everyone will hate the Empire. We have allies. Though they may not agree with the direction, but they will remain allies. Then it shouldn't be a problem if our allies will still favor us. Nagato paused, watching the Emperor silently. He had yet to take his eyes off him since he, Nagato, walked in here. Did her perhaps know about Obito's visit? Nagato quickly crushed such thoughts. It wasn't possible for Naruto to know. There wasn't anything that entered a Megacure without his knowledge. Even if the man knew about that loathsome human's visit, there shouldn't be a problem because there was nothing the Emperor could do about it. And he doesn't have wards placed inside his tower to block anyone from coming. Do you not think they will change over time? The Emperor's tone never changed, but it felt a little heavier than before. A few days ago I believed they would over time. But I do remember my time in Konoha and I know that when a human's heart is clouded with hatred, they are blind to the truth. That, however, does not rule out the possibility for change. While he didn't particularly care enough, Naruto had yet to lose hope in humanity. If he had, he would have forced things long ago. I still believe that if someone can forcefully open their eyes, the situation will change over time. Who will it be, to open their eyes, you? Nagato asked. No. The Emperor merely said. I've not become so sympathetic to the cause for peace to do so. My duty is still bound to this country. Aside from what happens inside the walls of allies, I hardly care. You, however, have said you wish for peace. Once I have cleared the war stage, you will take center stage. Does that do it for you? The last part may have sounded like the man wanted his opinion, but Nagato knew better. It was fine nevertheless. He wasn't going to shake his head negatively. He'd planned to agree with the Emperor. It did after all, went along the lines of what he was looking for. Nodding, Nagato spoke, that will do. Do you still plan on ruling the elemental nations? He couldn't exactly preach peace when he was working for the devil now could he? Everyone would just call him a liar, and his word would likely be ignored. No, Naruto didn't elaborate any further. But that will depend, he still didn't give out full details. While his answer was, no, nothing had changed from his previous thoughts. For a moment, he would control the 5 great nations to change a few things. Nagato was just told what he wanted to hear. I see, Nagato said. What will be my duty then? You'll take the defense of our small allies. We don't want anything happening to them, lest they start cursing the Emperor for failing to protect them, Naruto said. You take the role of the protector and I will take the role of the aggressor. That will make things simple for you. Ultimately, this will be our last meeting until the war ends. I see, Nagato gave a nod of understanding. What did you mean by tread carefully? What we just discussed. You will play the careful part and I will do what I do best. Nagato wasn't the least surprised by the response. Naruto didn't run away from warning signs. He reveled in them and actually ran towards them. He enjoyed doing the risky, and would gladly face any consequences as a result of his actions. Obviously, the Emperor was going to joyfully dance to his favorite tune while destruction followed his path. As per his words, he would follow behind cleaning the mess. Why? Because he wanted the road to be accessible and accommodating to life. Still, Nagato didn't frown. He accepted the challenge. It would be worth it as it would drive him closer to his dream. Still, the Emperor's lack of care did bother him though. A man with a heart like Naruto's shouldn't be a leader. At least that is what he believes anyway. What of Konan? What of her? The Emperor asked. Do you wish for her to be by your side? Nagato nodded. She has always been a supporter of my dream. I will need her by my side as I prepare. She will also be needed to run a Megacure while I carry out my defensive duties. The Emperor didn't even think about it. It was almost as if he had expected him to request Conan back to his side. Take her with you when you leave. That said, the lights went out, and the Emperor's eye closed. Nagato knew he was dismissed. He didn't waste any further time before swirling around to leave the throne room. At least he got what he wanted. A day later, if Shion were to be honest with herself, the sight she was seeing was really exquisite, breathtaking even. She didn't expect the capital city of the Imperial Kingdom to be so beautiful, full of life and happiness. She expected something dull, the kind of place that mirrored the expression that always settled in the Emperor. But she was surprised with what she saw. No, she was shocked with what she saw since she stepped out of the comfort of the royal train, accompanied by the royal guards. She had never been to this place before. People often talked about the capital more often than not, but she never took interest in rumors and gossips. It was just hard to imagine Joy and Naruto in the same room. The Emperor was anything but a joyous person. Could she be faulted for thinking that his country wouldn't be any different than him? Hell no. Still, she didn't regret being here. It was nice to breathe in some fresh air from the capital into her lungs. The walk to the royal palace had been pleasant as well. The atmosphere was absolutely different from what she felt outside of the country. There were a lot of troubles with other nations preparing for the upcoming war. But stepping in here, you could never say this was the nation that was going to go against other nations in the war. Then again, they had every reason to be confident and worry-free. They had the Emperor to protect them. The man has showed to be an immovable mountain, and it would certainly be mildly interesting to see how he does in the war. No, she had a guess. The question ought to be what he would do. The land of demons wasn't in any trouble because of the war. It wasn't going to reach them. The war was surely going to take place all over the 5 great nations, with attacks coming in from all angles. The security she felt was enough to pull her out of the calm land of hers towards this country to honor her word to the Emperor. Still, she didn't know if someone would attempt anything on her just to get to the Emperor. Surely, when the enemies find out that she has some relationship with the Empire, they will target her life, just to get to the Emperor. It wasn't that the Emperor would care. Perhaps maybe. Shion couldn't decide which. The royal palace was rather quiet. And it felt peaceful. The air around the passages was really calming to breath. It was as if she was surrounded the green leaves of nature, but there was none. Yet it smelled like nature. Along the way, they did come across a few guards stationed around the passages, watching the palace. 2 large doors came into view after they see a corner, and Shion felt that this was the place they were heading towards. She felt rather nervous all of the sudden. She was going to meet the Emperor once more. This time, in his home. But it was the Emperor nonetheless. What sort of image was he going to give her this time? This was like his den. A lion's den, if she could say. And she was walking right into it. Shion let in a long intake of oxygen as she steeled her resolve. Don't stress too much, priestess, Haisuke said, smiling a bit at the woman beside him. His Majesty doesn't bite his guests. Well, that was true, but it depended on what you brought on as a guest. They didn't have that many of guests in the palace. It was almost off limits to most people. The Crystal Palace was a different story altogether. Since it was the HQ of the Prime Minister, the place was rather crowded with people, and most guests were served there rather than here. The Emperor rarely left this place after all, and he didn't like the bickering that always took center stage at the Crystal Palace. The bottom line was that there was really nothing for one to worry about when facing the Emperor, well, unless you were the enemy. If you were the enemy, the only advice Haisuke would be giving to anyone would be to prepare a will and say the last prayers before stepping into the Emperor's ring, because you didn't know if you were going to come back alive or not. Haisuke did know that a lot of people feared the Emperor, but he wasn't a scary person, well, when he didn't want to be. He could be quite frightening on his day. That was beside the point though. The main thing was that the Emperor wasn't as fearful as people assumed him to be. If he, being just a nobody, could argue with certain things with the Emperor or take a different path than the one the Emperor had ordered, what more could a person like Shion do to earn his ire? Still, one always had to be mindful of the line. There was a border you should never cross. Shion sent Haisuke a thankful smile before staring into the threatening doors. Lead the way, she said a bit quietly, and calmly. Her worries all but a memory now. Haisuke nodded and proceeded to head towards the doors. He pushed them open and they were greeted by darkness that consumed them once their backs were turned on the doors, which closed on their own. The only reason Shion didn't freak out was because she could feel Haisuke just beside her. She couldn't feel a damn thing, but as she walked deeper, she felt something powerful. Almost like there was a beast right ahead and they were walking right towards it. She could have stopped, she wanted to. But she just followed Haisuke's footsteps, and never allowed him to get away from him. The man suddenly stopped, and Shion followed his example. Her silence continued as she felt that Haisuke wasn't going to say a word. It was as if he was waiting for something. She couldn't be sure. She couldn't see anything in the darkness. Just ahead of them, a red eye snapped open. Shion nearly jerked up. She would have shrieked even if she didn't recognize the eye of the Emperor. There was no any other that she could forget the pattern of that Sharingan. She had dreams about it before she even met the Emperor in person. The lights flickered into life, and Shion saw the Emperor settled carefully on his throne. He didn't say anything, just stared into the empty space between them. Shion took the time to look around the throne room. It was fairly pleasant. Then again, she didn't know how a throne room was like. She hasn't met any kings after all. Your Majesty, we were able to reach Lady Shion safely and get her into the country without any troubles. Her guards are currently exploring the city, Haisuke said, in a kneeled position. Shion watched carefully as the visible eye of the Emperor fell upon her. As he did, it felt like a sudden weight was placed on her shoulders and an invisible force had bound her. When the eye went to Haisuke, the weight was relieved, and she released a small breath. What of the children playing outside the walls? They are just scouts watching over our borders. Didn't attempt to do anything. Just watched. I presume their orders are to simply observe before anything is to be done. But that doesn't mean they won't try to land a huge blow should they see an opening, Haisuke responded with some seriousness in his tone. Their war was going to occur soon. While their forces have yet to leave the borders of the country, enemy forces were already scouting for any movements and were marching into battle stations. They were relaxed in the comfort of the Emperor's power, but they knew that the day would come for them to make a move. Should we do something about them? No, the Emperor said. Let the children play. They won't stay forever there. So until we can no longer bear with their noise, you will shut them up. Haisuke nodded. As long as they stay there, we can keep an eye on them, and perhaps get some intel from them. It is not like they are going to get anything since we have heavily fortified the walls. The man paused for a moment. I will take my leave then, he added before disappearing from the room. Naruto's eyes fell onto Shion, yet no word left his mouth. The priestess steeled her resolve before speaking. What? No, hello. The man was just looking at her. And even after she said those words, he didn't seem like he'd heard her, he just continued looking at her. The silence lasted for a few moments before he finally responded. This is my house. You found me here. Aren't you supposed to be the one to say so? Shion shrugged. Your subordinate already introduced me. Besides, I'm your guest. You're here for the duties I requested then. Naruto said, earning a nod from Shion. Excellent. Come closer to me. Shion gave the Emperor a suspicious look as she hesitated on obliging. Finally relenting, the priestess walked over to the Emperor. She climbed up to the little stairs, reaching up to the throne. Naruto was holding out his right hand, still sitting comfortably. Shion took the hand. She was rather surprised that he knew how to be gentle with a lady. Still, Shion gave the Emperor a questioning look. This was an unusual situation. One she wasn't completely comfortable with. But she still tried looking calm. You're tense, the Emperor observed. Do I bring out the tension in your body? Shion shook her head. This is just an unusual situation for me. So, preparations have been made. I will send you to the temple to give last touches. Once done, you will be returned here, the Emperor said. Shion went quiet for a few moments as she tried to think of a better way to phrase her next words. I wish to see the young one first. I saw you holding a child. Shion gave the Emperor credit for his lack of reaction at her statement. Not even his eyes moved, nor was there a slight twitch on his skin. He just continued staring at her as he had been. She assumed this to be a secret because the outside world didn't know and she had seen it in one of her visions. After you have completed your duties for the day, Naruto said. Shion felt something pulling her before she disappeared from the presence of the Emperor. Naruto closed his eyes and darkness consumed the room once more. Later that day. What do you want, Sasuke? It was the kind of greeting the raven-head Uchiha received upon entering the dark throne room. He hadn't even blinked or had a second in the place, and the Emperor was already asking him what he wanted. What was wrong with that man? Considering that the past relations had been tolerable, so much that he had been willing for work for the Emperor, he expected a kind welcome. Then again, this was Naruto he was dealing with. Emotions were not his strong suits, and he rarely acted on them. The war may be hovering just above them, but Sasuke didn't see an enemy that needed to be extinguished when he saw the Emperor. He saw a fellow Uchiha. There were just the two of them, Obito excluded. Their numbers didn't need to thin than they already are. If he became enemies with Naruto, then it would spell the end of his beloved clan. Sasuke didn't want that. He wanted for the Uchiha to reign supreme once more as it did in the days before. The war is just around the corner. We are going to be on opposite sides. Konoha will send shinobi after you when you're outside this city. Kakashi doesn't want to cause any problems to innocent people by taking part in anything that will see armies try to tear down the walls of this country, Sasuke said, getting right at it. He didn't want for the Emperor's forces to come to Konoha for more destruction, not that he would allow for that to happen under his watch. Konoha had to be kept safe from everyone and everything that may try to threaten it. Ensuring things did not spiral out of control meant talking to the man who held the good cards in his hands. I have already dealt with Konoha. I don't plan to do anything. Unless you give me a reason, then it is safe, Naruto said. Sasuke narrowed his eyes slightly. There won't be any reason. I will make sure of it, he stated rather firmly. Naruto watched Sasuke for a few moments before speaking. So you wish to be Hokage, he stated. Fear not. I have no war with Konoha. Even though I know some of its strongest will face me in battle. I see no harm in dancing with the strongest. It will be fun, so I won't hold any grudges for trying to K me. I will thank them if they do well to boil my bee. Sasuke just shook his head. Yup, this was just one stage for one man to enjoy himself. Ruling the entire world was really appealing, but he didn't care for that, his fun mattered. While at the same time, a service to the nations will be rendered. He agreed that a new order needed to be formed to create a new world that will no longer see shinobi making like that his brother was forced to do. As my gift to a fellow Uchiha for when you become Hokage, I will tell you this, Konoha is going to be attacked the moment those elite shinobi leave the village to face me. By who? The shinobi who left Konoha. Their hatred goes deep. They still hate Konoha for the Third Shinobi World War, especially Minato's actions. My actions as well. We both were connected to Konoha. The villagers' refusal to fully take part in the war has also enraged them. So the Raikage has nothing to do with it. I presumed he would do something, Sasuke said. It will be rather easy to force upon a new change in the elemental nations after the war. You already have Suna and Kiri, and after the war, I will come with Konoha. I can change this world. I will be looking forward to watch you attempt that, Naruto said before his eye closed. Sasuke didn't need to be told that he had been dismissed. 2 days later. It has been quite some time since Yugito last stood before the Emperor. So long. She hadn't been having any thought of facing him once again because of the current flow of wind. He was an enemy of Kumogaku as things stood and her appearance before him was supposed to be in battle. For this reason, she'd thought his presence would continue to be scarce before her. But here she was before him, looking deep into those hypnotic eyes full of power. He looked old from the last time she saw him. As far as she was concerned, she was older than the Emperor, but looking at him, he seemed much older than her. His peers hadn't even grown this much. From what she knew, he had gone through a miraculous overnight growth. It was without reason as none were given. Obviously there was something behind it, but who was she to ask? Yugito folded her hands across her sea, looking carefully at the Emperor. Her conversations with him often confused and conflicted her. Her past meetings didn't leave better impressions on another worry-free talk with him. She has been forced to crush her maddening thoughts of him each time she spoke to him. What about that time she saw him not as the god people feared, but as a man, a human who was vulnerable and weakened? That was a memory Yugito would never forget. He'd allowed her to see him in such a state for a reason. Regardless of how much power he held, he was still human. Of course, the current flow of things didn't make her happy. Not the least. She didn't want to fight a war. But she had no choice but to engage. For the sake of her own village and her life. She would never even abandon Kumogakure regardless of anything the Yondaime Reikage does say to her. She has endured too much. She took too much crap when she was still a Jinchuriki to throw up the towel at this stage. She would sa Kumo Kunoiki. A proud Kunoiki. This is why she was going to fight this war. For her village. It didn't matter who was her opponent. As long as Kumogakure was threatened, she would fight. Yes, the Reikage would surely force her to stir up untouched waters, but she would have to do so as a shinobi of Kumogakure. The man had been close to having her hanged when he suspected she was working with the emperor. She certainly didn't want to do anything to incur his wrath. Not when Samui had fallen on her knees to save her behind. The life that Samui had saved meant much to her. She wasn't going to do anything to throw it away. It may seem contradicting if she does enter into battle with the emperor, as fighting him in her current level was just a lost cause. She had no plans to fight him though. Even though she knew Samui would never allow for Naruto to harm her, she wasn't planning to engage him. Things could as well remain civil despite the unmasked animosity between him and the Reikage. Well, it seemed one-sided from A's side though. But that was besides the point. It would tear Samui apart if she, being Samui's friend, and Naruto being her husband, were to fight. Because Yugito didn't want that, she could stand before the emperor. I thought I would be seeing Samui, not you, Yugito said. She wasn't complaining though. Still, it is risky for me to be even here. Yunoa has been very cautious around me since Samui. Losing Samui to the emperor really hit the Reikage hard. It was not because of his fondness to the blonde-hair Kunoiki, but it was because he really hated Naruto. Just thinking that the black-haired emperor had dripped his fangs in one of his loyal subordinates had been disheartening. The man had been furious. If it wasn't for B, he would have had Samui for treason in his emotional collapse. Well, Naruto wouldn't have allowed for that to happen anyway. Hell would freeze before he allowed Samui to be harmed. I made the right preparations before summoning you, Naruto said. Do you think I'm that careless to pull you out without a plan, especially at a time like this? Yugito shrugged. I'm just saying. A has eyes everywhere in this stage. You never know when spies are watching your moves and plans. It is at this time that he has pulled his most trusted closer to him, and others under careful watch. How are the preparations going, by the way? I better has made some fancy weapons all in preparation for eradicating me, Naruto said. I'm not at liberty to discuss that with you, Emperor. I came here to see Samui, Yugito said, as respectfully as she could. Naruto became silent for a few seconds before he stood up from his throne. His footsteps were silent as he walked down before moving past Yugito. Follow me, he said, both hands folded behind him. Yugito silently followed the emperor where he led her. Later that day, it had been rather long since Yugao last remembered having dinner in the presence of Naruto. Though it had been a few days since she came here, she had never been invited to have dinner with the royal family, a mother, father and a precious daughter. The other wife had exiled herself, with good reasons of course. It didn't seem to bother the emperor that much though. She could guess that he had the war to occupy his thoughts. Fixing things with Mei could come after he has repelled the war. At least that is what Yugao thought. She didn't think for a second that the man didn't care about the troubling situation he found himself in. He may appear as if he doesn't, but Yugao knew him too well to say he was that careless. She wasn't the only one who was invited to the royal family's dinner table, a very pregnant Guren, Shinji and Haisuke. The latter two were two most trusted subordinates of the emperor. If Naruto could trust someone to take care of things, it would be those two. That said, Yugao was not surprised to see them eating alongside the emperor and Samui. She also knew that the two generals worked zealously for their emperor and would no doubt for him, if it was necessary. Yugao didn't see the emperor in any situation he had to his subordinates in order to live or succeed in anything though. Looking at Naruto, Yugao couldn't help but note how human he looked. It was like that time they both went to get some ramen in Konoha and silently ate at the ruins of the old Konoha. It had been nice, even though not much was said between them. Naruto's eyes met with Yugao's for a moment, and she was sure that he was going to comment on her glances, but he didn't say a word. just looked back at his food and continued eating. Now the purple-haired former Anbu had the urge to raise a curious brow. It wasn't like Naruto to keep his thoughts to himself. He always liked saying whatever it was that came to his mind. "You're awfully quiet," Yugao finally said, causing everyone to turn their attention to the Emperor for a brief moment. "I'm mulling over the future," Naruto said. He looked at Yugao for a moment before his eyes left for the plate in front of him once more again. "Besides, can't you people talk without me getting involved?" Yugao shrugged. "We can. But I'm not familiar with anyone here other than you to be striking conversations out of nowhere." Shinji added his own thoughts. "I figured since we were called here, you had something to say to us." Haisuke nodded. "My thoughts exactly," he said. "But I think we don't have to be familiar with each other to strike conversations. I mean, we are all here and have gathered here because of His Majesty. That is something to talk about." Gurren took a moment of pause from shoving the green food down her tea and looked at the Emperor for a moment as she spoke. "What about the future?" "It looks set up for great things as things stand," she said. "That is how it appears," Naruto said. "But I have to think deeply about it, in case something unexpected happen." His eyes looked at each of them briefly, looking at no one in particular as he spoke. "In this empire, I trust all of you the most. You all know me well, and have worked with me well." Samui just continued to eat silently, looking as if she wasn't interested in the conversation, but her ears were as attentive as the others. This was one flow of words she had yet to have with her Naruto. He has been thinking a lot in the past days while locked in the darkness of his throne room. She never bothered him, but chose to allow him to process everything on his own pace. "What about the Mizukage and the Kazekage?" Gurren asked. Mei was his wife, surely she had to be here as his trusted, and the Kazekage was a good person as far as she could tell. Naruto had even trusted the two with creating healthy relationships with other nations for the empire. He had to have had some level of trust in them. Gaara is not technically a part of this empire, he is an ally. I do trust him. And Mei, of course. But due to overwhelming difficulties that have surfaced, she couldn't be here, not that it was unnecessary for her to be here. Karen should have been here, but there is something she is doing in the whirlpools. She should return tomorrow nevertheless, Naruto said, a bit calmly. Haisuke nodded. Shinji and I are in charge of the Royal Guard and Special Corps. We're also in charge of ensuring the safety of the royal family. Gurren is, real, minister of the empire, while these other two are family, he said. A trusted circle of leadership within the empire, Shinji concluded. Naruto nodded, accepting both the speaker's words. Gurren, when this started, I called upon you and centered the founding of the empire on your shoulders. You did well, much better than I'd anticipated. For that, I thank you for everything you have done for me, and for this kingdom. Shinji, Haisuke, I thank you for everything. I hope you heard that well, because I will not repeat it. A small smile graced Naruto's lips. There is not need to thank us, Heike, Shinji and Haisuke said simultaneously. We did what we did because this power we have, you gave to us. You gave us something to do. We have people we care for, people we want to protect, a place we call home, all because of you. Haisuke said. Nevertheless, we thank you for your kind words. It makes us happy to know that you appreciate our efforts, and trust us. Shinji added before Haisuke concluded. We will continue to work for you earnestly. Naruto nodded, with that small smile. That will be much appreciated, generals, he said. Yugao, I learned to love because of you. You did me good, even though I did not return the favor. I will, however, remain grateful for all you did for me. Silence welcomed the Emperor's words. Samui broke her silence, seeing that the others were overwhelmed by Naruto's tone, which possessed a level of emotion in its softness. She guessed they'd never seen him so human. Is this what you've been thinking about? What does it has to do with the future anyway? Samui asked softly. Samui understood that this was probably going to be the leadership of the country. She understood that Naruto had never made his subordinates feel appreciated before, and it had to be done one day. For their confidence and support. Perhaps this was a better time than any to boost their trust in the Emperor. They had a war coming up. The seeds were already planted. They had to fight soon. Instead of the future, shouldn't we discuss how we're going to deal with the current issues? Most of the nations are out for your head because of your proclamation. You have also the daimyos, that should make them hate us more than they did, Yugao said. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate his efforts. She did. But the present was not a done deal. It had puzzles that needed to be solved. They had to survive now and they would be able to freely talk about the future. Yugao didn't doubt Naruto's power by any means, but she knew this world had many tricks that could pull down even the greatest shinobi to have ever lived. The present poses no threat to our future. I cannot fail. I cannot afford to, Naruto said firmly. Besides, the daimyos are not out of commission. They are just out temporarily disabled. I had to do something to ensure that they understood and so that I was taken seriously. I'm not sure, they will be of use after the war though. Yugao shook her head. Unbelievable, she uttered. Gurren ignored that word and looked at the emperor. What do you think about the future? Surely you have been planning something. I care not for the state of the world. But I'm rather focused on the empire. However, for the empire's peace, the outside has to be in order. This is why I have deemed the war a necessity, Naruto said. After the war, we will have people hating us. But we will not become tyrants. The empire and its allies will just become the main force in the elemental nations. For this reason, we will have to be careful with our actions afterwards because we don't want another war. That said, I want to put the final pieces into the structure of the empire. I have already told you that if there was such a thing as nobility, you two became nobles, Naruto said to Shinji and Haisuke. Gurren, that has you included. You will continue to be prime minister, your children shall occupy that post. The royal family will continue to own the country. Your family will be responsible for leading this empire. Naturally, the king will come from my side. Naruto looked at Shinji. I understand you and Gurren are one. But what Gurren has done cannot be accounted as the same as you have done. For this reason, you will be given your own separate reward. Aside from your current duties, your family will be given a land closer to the Valley of the End. After the war, we will create another village there, which your family shall lead. The emperor turned to Haisuke, adding to your current duties, your family will become leaders of the City of Sound. For now, while I'm still with you, you will only have responsibility to your current posts. However, when I'm no longer here, Samui will need your help. For she will become the empress. I wanted Mei to do it, but Kiri needs her. Naruto's words were greeted with a silence. It lasted for a few minutes as everyone digested what he had said. Naruto, Yugao started carefully. What do you mean when you're no longer here? Naruto smiled. It was a rare small sad smile. I will be with you for a little while longer. But a time will come where you will have to protect this empire on your own. I have made all preparations to ensure that you can fulfill that duty. I'm afraid that due to the damage I will take during the war, I will only be able to preserve this frail body for a little while longer. The emperor stood up. I don't know when, but I'm telling you this to be prepared for when the time comes. I want you to fight knowing that you have bigger things ahead of you. So, survive this war. Because until our children grow up, you will lead and protect it. That said, Naruto walked away from the table. Following morning. What are you doing here? It was Mei's response at seeing Naruto appear in her living room early in the morning before she could even get to work. His presence was unannounced, and she had to get to her office to begin another day as the Godai Mizukage. Their current troubled relationship shouldn't make it permissible for him to just appear before her as if everything was good. Not everything was well. He betrayed her trust and showed no remorse for it. All he cared for was his little family. She was just another part of the parcel that didn't need to be told of anything that he did hidden in his quarters. It was okay, he could do whatever he felt like he wanted to do. Mei wasn't going to force him to do anything he didn't want. But she wasn't going to force herself to be part of a situation that was only giving her problems. Honestly, she has experienced little to no joy in her relationship with the Emperor. Everything has just been on the downhill since they officially made it to husband and wife. There were a few good moments when Naruto acted like a husband. But those moments were few, were becoming a distant thing in her mind. In fact, she could vaguely remember the last time she had a pleasant time with him. I understand that there is an unsolved issue between us, but that isn't the greeting I was hoping to receive from you, Naruto said, settling down on the couch. Just because you tried standing up for me at the Cage Summit doesn't mean that everything will be okay, Mei said, looking at Naruto without any emotion in her face. The Emperor nodded, expression neutral, eyes showing some life as he stared into the Mizukages. I understand that. I wasn't hoping that things would change because of something so little. I did what I did to fulfill a responsibility of a man or a husband, if you like. Mei Terumi snorted. Yeah, like you care about any of your responsibilities to your wife, she said bitterly. She didn't sit down, but rather chose to remain standing. I do take my responsibility with some level of seriousness, Mei, the Emperor said with a firm nod. He looked serious about what he'd just said. But Mei wasn't just going to take his word for it. Really? Mei asked, a bit sarcastically, and with a furrowed brow. I have not noticed. Is it on me or on your other woman? Because I have not seen you being a responsible person. You simply delegate everything to those beneath you. I'm surprised you haven't even shifted your duties to me to one of your men. The Mizukage folded her hands across her sea, gave the Emperor a hard stare. Not that it did anything to Naruto. I delegated work to them because I wanted them to prepare themselves and get used to the work for the time when I'm not there. I will not always be the Emperor. This is why I had them deal with everything without interfering too much, Naruto said, trying to at least defend some of his choices in the past. What about me? Mei looked at the man expectantly, she even touched her sea with her right hand. Have I been that awfully dismissal in my treatment of you, Mei? Naruto asked, his tone laced with some minimal curiosity. His expression revealed nothing though. Yes, Mei said, and gave a firm nod to emphasize her point. What do you want, Naruto? I have a busy day ahead of me and I would rather not start it with a headache. Naruto motioned for Mei to sit down. But the woman didn't budge. Still, Naruto gave her his own firm stare, making her relent. She didn't sit with him though, she sat across him, facing him with an expressionless mask. I came to talk, the Emperor said, his tone calm. About? Mei asked, playing the oblivious card. She knew it would only annoy him, but she was curious if he would hold back from dishing out one of his predictable response that didn't make one feel any better. The Emperor had to chew his usual retort to such a response. The woman knew exactly what he wanted to talk about. If it wasn't because of the talk he had with Yugao, he would have said something unpleasant, which would only alienate him from her further. He didn't come here to screw things up. He came here to try to mend things, so that after the war, he could work on strengthening the empire so that it could survive without him. Our relationship. Mei leaned back to the couch, sipped in some air, before speaking. Talk. I'm listening. I'm not the best at expressing my emotions. In fact, I'm pathetic at it. I guess I have become used to my previous lifestyle that it has become difficult for me to adapt to this change. I have always hated dealing with emotions. But this is no longer a situation where I can just ignore them. I have to deal with them, Naruto said. I'm surprised that you even have emotions. Mei said sarcastically. The air went cold for a second after those words. Don't push me, Mei. I understand you're angry, but that snappy attitude will not solve anything. I can indulge a few insults, or a beat up to release some pent-up stress, but when I'm trying to make amends, try to be pleasant because I have my own limits. Mei narrowed her eyes. Are you saying that you understand the pain and embarrassment you've made me experience? Do you really understand any of it, Naruto? Naruto slowly shook his head. I never said I understood your pain. I said I understand that you're angry. Saying that I understand what you're going through would be a lie. I cannot understand. Perhaps I am incapable of understanding it. But I get the idea. And it's not pleasant. That I can say. Naruto paused for a moment, shredding a few thoughts running through his head. As I was saying, my handling of emotions has not been acceptable, especially when it comes to you. I have admitted this a couple of times. Yet it has not changed. Implementing the change for me is rather difficult. I cannot ask you to understand any of this. Over the past days, I've had loads of time to think and sort things out as well as plan for the future. Prior to that, I spoke to Yugao about this issue. And I admit fault and carelessness, neglect, as well as an abysmal treatment of you as my wife. I have never treated you as such. I never made the effort to comfort you. I expected you to dish out everything. Naruto displayed a small sad smile, and closed his eyes for a moment. Mei heard him, loud and clear, but she wasn't going to say anything. Not now at least. Her mind wasn't in the right place to say anything. She didn't trust herself to say anything good, or constructive. As opposed to say anything, she decided to just nod, and allow him to continue. The nod was to let him know she heard him. I was wrong and I'm sorry for putting you through such a position. I'm sorry for being a bad person. I'm sorry for neglecting to inform you about Etsuko. I thought I was doing best for her. Yet I was doing wrong towards you. I never for once considered it. Yes, I can be inconsiderate at times. The war will not last long. I want to bury everything that isn't fruitful along with it. After which, I wish to start a new cycle. I really wish for you to be part of it. You have to forgive me first for that to happen. I'm not telling you to forgive me. I'm asking you to consider it. Naruto gave Mei a sad smile once more. I do care for you. My actions may be contrary to that, but I really do. The Emperor stood up. Until you decide, stay safe, Mei. Naruto's smile changed after a few moments and he spoke before disappearing out of the room. Back then, you said you wanted to be loved. I have not done that, but I wish to do it. If you take my word, I will do what I can to give you what I want. I'm not the best of people, but I will try. A few days later, a panicked Karen burst through the doors of the throne room. Naruto, we have, the next words S in her T when she comprehended the image of the Emperor. He was on his throne, as usual, but he had a really frightening look on his face. The Rinnegan was activated, pulsing with overwhelming power, the truth-seeking balls were swirling dangerously around him, and something like black smoke was seeping out of him. When Karen's mind finally comprehended all of these, she was forced onto her knees, and found it difficult to breathe. The power leaking out of the Emperor was suffocating her, and he didn't appear as if he'd noticed her presence. Karen wanted to say something, but when cracks began to spread around the hall, when the throne was crushed, her heart began to race. She understood. Naruto was pissed off by what had her caused her dread, and compelled her to run over here. He already knew. She couldn't fault him for being in such a state. It was unavoidable. What had caused her panic was frighteningly dangerous. Naruto suddenly rose up to his feet after his throne was crushed. He looked up and jumped up, bursting through the roof of the royal palace. No need for doors this time. The matter that was coming to him was bigger than a few walls. Karen breathed out and in. Any more of that and she would have literally. Above the capital, Naruto's glorious form floated with a deathly aura oozing out of him. For what was possibly the first time Naruto cursed, he cursed his own arrogance and ignorance. Hundreds of energy beams were coming in from the north. They held enough power to turn his capital into smoke. The power he was seeing with his eyes was overwhelming. It held more power than a tailed beast bomb from the 10 Tails. It would be much more catastrophic than having the meteorites he dropped on Konoha drop on his home, if he allowed those beams to hit it. Meanwhile, fire. A roared before a large cannon was fired straight at the walls that stood before his men and marching towards the imperial capital. The weapon fired a large stream of natural energy towards the wall. The energy tore through the wall, breaking it. And a large hole was made. A grinned like a madman before shouting, "Charge!" As thousands of shinobi charged, a released of full-blown laughter. Ha 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 ha, how he wished he could see the look on the Emperor's face. His plan was just brilliant. It was genius. One could only assume the Raikage has never heard that saying, be careful for what you wish for. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.